Hello, Richard. This is Richard from UpsideDownFork, who's very kindly agreed to answer some questions for us about, solar, but also more generally about some of the things that he covers on his channel, UpsideDownFork on YouTube. So I guess first and foremost, would you mind sort of starting introducing yourself and then maybe tell us how you got into the world of solar and smart home technology?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, as you say, I'm Richard on YouTube, known as Upside Down Fork. Father of three young children, and what comes with that is quite high home energy consumption, as I found out the hard way. That was kind of my path into looking at solar and some of the smart home technology. I was confronted with big bills, and I wanted to try and understand why my bills were so high and what I could do about reducing those bills. And that was kind of the beginning of my story. And since then, it's led on to solar panels and a heat pump and an electric vehicle and insulation in the home. And one thing has led to the other. And of course, the Loop app, why I'm talking to you, was a piece of that puzzle, understanding what my situation was with my data. So yeah, it's been a very long road, but it's been a very rewarding one so far.
Okay, so we say it's been a long road. I guess could you share a little bit about your personal experience of installing solar panels, for example? What was the process that you went through and what was the experience like?
Yeah, so I've actually been looking at getting solar for about 8 years. And we looked at the previous property and we didn't feel that it was quite worthwhile. 8 years ago, the capital investment was a lot higher back then. The price on a lot of the hardware, especially the panels, has fallen considerably. And also, our energy consumption was a lot lower when we only had one young child. And now, with working from home and three children, everything, we moved into our current home now in 2022 amidst the whole energy crisis and high bills and everything else. And that was really when I set about intensive research on what to do about our energy consumption and solar panels specifically. And I started online Googling it. But as anyone knows, the internet is full of many opinions and everything else. And so I started to understand that the only way to make the best decision for me was to be armed with the data necessary to know which steps to take. And ultimately, I went down the path of kind of overspecking the solar panel system. I guess that's the simplest way to say it. And the reason that I did that was because I recognized that we would need to future proof, because electric vehicles and electrification is around the corner for all of us, whether we're ready to embrace it or not. So if I'm going to go to the effort of putting the scaffolding up and putting 6 panels on my roof, why not cover our roof? And we ended up with 22 panels to make sure that we are well future proofed. So yeah, I guess that's a little snapshot of our little journey into solar.
Well, that is pretty well future-proofed. Okay. This might be a stupid question or an obvious answer, but what are the main benefits that you found since you installed the panels?
Yeah, so in the summer months, our bills are negative, so that means the energy companies are paying us. And the last couple of months during the summer, they've been paying us well over £100 per month, which is lovely to see, to try and recuperate a little bit of that, capital investment that we've put into the property. But it is also that over the course of the year we should be net zero, both in our carbon emissions as a home now, and also in terms of the financial costs. We should be net zero as well. In theory, we've now got a heat pump in place, we've now got an electric vehicle. So I'm currently measuring, and you'll see more of that on my YouTube channel, to see if we can actually reach that goal of actually self-sustaining and ultimately net zero. We still do use the grid with a bit of energy trading, and so we're adopting a strategy of a bit of seasonal offsetting, exporting as much as we can in the summer months to help us through the winter months in both the financial terms and the carbon cost. But it feels great. My wife is probably slightly more motivated by the green credentials than I am, if I'm perfectly honest. That is a part of my motivation, but for me, I am more financially motivated. And it's very powerful to see that the the return on investment or break even period or whatever you want to term it for solar has come down radically over the 8 years that I've casually looked at installing solar, where previously people were talking about a 15-20 year payback. Now the systems are 5 to 10 years. It doesn't really matter how big or small your system is. Pretty much everyone seems to get a payback somewhere in the 5 to 10 year period, which is more enticing for regular people like me that we have to spend our money wisely and we have to get a return on investment. We can't just do it willy-nilly to just have a nice clear conscience, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's certainly something we've seen as well. The installation costs, the hardware costs, and obviously the high cost of energy mean that, yeah, we're seeing sort of return periods under 7 years for sort of an average system. So yeah, that certainly mirrors our experience of looking at solar. So I suppose next question, as a sort of a consumer, what challenges did you face during that installation process, either in the sort of research period or during and after?
The research period was the most difficult for me personally, probably because I'm a little bit of a control freak. And so I really wanted to make sure that if I'm spending my hard-earned money, that it's going exactly to what is going to best, not necessarily what we want, but what we need. So that was a bit of a minefield getting into some of the technical details, and I probably got into the weeds of things that I didn't need to at all, but that's kind of my character. I found a great YouTube channel called Gary Does Solar, and he kind of demystifies a few things, and Gary is really brilliant. I've had a few exchanges with him and a bit of correspondence, so a little plug for his channel because he really demystified things and really simplified a lot of things for me. But after the research phase, the installation process itself, I couldn't believe how non-invasive it was compared to other kind of works that we've had done on the house. You've got workmen everywhere and it's chaotic and it's a bit of a nightmare, and other things we've had to have planning permission for. Solar panels was a breeze. Me and my wife couldn't believe it. The guys were so quick, and they mostly all worked outside, and we had some work that had to happen in the loft and the garage, but pretty much we didn't even know they were here. They were here for a couple of days, they were gone, the system was commissioned, and it's been working flawlessly since. So I was very pleasantly surprised about the kind of installation phase. The research phase was a lot more difficult, and I can see that there's some things that the industry is doing to try and help people a little bit with that, a little bit more education.
Yeah, and yeah, it's interesting to say, and we're hoping to do some work with Gary Does Solar as well. So yeah, good, interesting that you mentioned him because it's such a good source of content on there. There's some great advice. So yeah, certainly something we'd reiterate as well. I think also interesting to hear that your perceptions as to how difficult it would be weren't matched by the reality of the installation process. We do hear that quite a lot, actually. The perception is that it's invasive. You've got people in the house, and actually, we try and desensitize that for people. It is only a couple of days. Most of it is outside. It's not going to cause any problems with the structural integrity of the house. It won't be as difficult as you think. So it's interesting to hear that was actually borne out in your own experience. So thanks for sharing that. Again, I think you've edged into this or trailed it already when you talked about future proofing and over-speccing. But is there anything else, or would you like to expand on that in terms of what you would tell people to consider when they're choosing a solar system?
Yeah, for me personally, my philosophy was just let's try and cover the whole roof. Let's go as big as we possibly can, because our young kids are going to become teenagers and those sorts of things. We've got rid of the gas boiler now. A heat pump uses a considerable amount of electricity, even when it's working efficiently. The electric vehicles, we're all going to have them in 10 years time, and so we need to be prepared for that. I noticed that online there's some people that talk about a rule of thumb of 120% of your annual consumption. So if you're currently consuming 5,000, then you want to kind of up spec to 120%. My personal opinion, as being someone who's go big or go home, I was aiming more. Let's go 200%. Let's try and double what our current usage and current consumption is, and try and make sure we're really future proofed. I know that in theory there may be some tax intricacies to worry about when you start generating too much solar that you can't use it yourself and you export too much. I think the main thrust of the point is really the extra capital investment from going from a 2.5 kilowatt system up to a 5 kilowatt system is in most cases pretty marginal. There's not a massive difference. A lot of the upfront costs are scaffolding, getting the men on site, your inverter, your DNO application, some of the cabling. But then once they actually get on the roof, a little bit extra of aluminium rail and a few steel brackets, and the solar panels are so cheap now. It was mind blowing how cheap it was. We originally were just looking at a small front part of our house, 6 panels that we could squeeze on the southeast orientation. We ended up putting 16 on the rear roof, which is northwest facing, very controversial, and they've been performing incredibly well on even in a weird orientation. But we went from 6 panels to 22 panels, and we didn't even double the cost of what that upfront investment was. And so I think you can look at it from a couple of angles. You can look at preparing for the future. You can also look at the kind of the financial returns, and you're going to get a much better return if you cover your roof as much as you kind of feasibly can.
And I guess the improvements in the efficiency of the panels as well over the years has made a big impact for those sorts of things as well. You get so much more. So you're looking at sort of 440 and upwards per panel now, whereas not very long ago it was 300 if you were lucky. So the high efficiency panels make a massive difference to the generation potential. Okay, so how do you make sure that you optimize the solar power that you generate? What do you do to get best use out of it?
Yeah, well, we currently watch the energy markets casually. I'm on a tariff called Octopus Agile. I'm sure, Simon, you'll be very familiar with that. And most of my viewers on YouTube will be very familiar with it. And most of what we try to do is during the middle of the day, we can sell our energy from the solar panels at 15p per kilowatt hour. And then we try and load shift all of our appliances, basically set them all on timer, and surprise, pretty much every appliance in your home, any of the big ones, they all have timers, whether you're aware of them or not. And so our dishwasher, our washing machine, our tumble dryer, also our heat pump heats our hot water, and we generally set them for 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning when the rates are rock bottom. So sometimes we're buying all our energy in at 5p per kilowatt hour, and we're exporting at 15p per kilowatt. And that's helped us to not only help the grid in balancing the load on the grid on that side of things, but it's made the payback a lot quicker and a lot easier to achieve because we're buying energy a lot cheaper than we're selling it. So that's roughly our strategy anyway.
Okay, thanks for sharing. You've obviously got lots and lots of followers who I think share some of their stories with you. Are there any particular stories that stand out, success stories who from folks who followed your advice and have sort of shared or fed back to you after that?
Yeah, well, I don't want to pick out just one because then all the rest of my followers will feel left out. But there are actually a few people who have gone on and started their own YouTube channels as well. And as I mentioned earlier about Gary Does Solar, he was a bit of an inspiration for me and one of the reasons why I thought I can share my personal journey. And so I think you're getting that kind of knock-on effect, that chain reaction of almost spreading the gospel of solar panels, the good news, as it were. But at least once a week, probably more frequently than that, I will have comments from subscribers that will say something along the lines of, I was on the fence, I was unsure, but you've given me the confidence to take the plunge and go ahead. Or they'll say something like, just to let you know, I've been kind of silently lurking. I've had solar panels installed this week and I'm absolutely over the moon. Thank you for giving me the confidence. And so I think the kind of the repetitive thing I hear about is people being reassured, people getting the confidence, people feeling not so what's the word? They're not feeling so unsure about taking the step because it's a big financial commitment. There is also some negativity in media and press about solar panels, and so not everything you read online is true about solar as well. And so I think the general message is reiterating that you don't need to worry, that solar is always a good thing. It's going to perform as you expect. In many cases, most cases, it'll perform better because a lot of the forecasting is, I guess, erring on the side of caution, and it's probably more pessimistic than it needs to be in some cases.
Yeah, I can definitely see that sort of ripple effect from sort of, as you say, spreading the gospel, normalizing things around it as well. So normalizing some of the costs, normalizing some of the expectations, but also giving insights into those sorts of return periods as well. Getting people used to those sorts of numbers, I think, is invaluable. And yeah, I'm not surprised at all to hear that converts people who previously had perhaps had lacked the conviction to go for it. I think having those sort of first-hand anecdotal but data-driven insights that you share, I think, yeah, not surprised at all to hear that converts people. So that's, yeah, okay, that's great. Last few questions. From your perspective, do you have a view on sort of trends in sort of the future of household solar and sort of smart home technology? Is there a direction that either you think it's going to take or you hope it's going to take?
Yeah, I think I totally align with what I presume are your ideas on this, because I think it's all about automation and integration between more things. We're seeing it more now with some of the home battery technology and taking advantage of demand flexibility schemes and also variable tariffs like Octopus Agile. But I'm sure we are going to start seeing that also then integrate into appliances like dishwashers, in washing machines, tumble dryers, even my heat pump. Even though it's got a great app and it's quite sophisticated, it doesn't currently have any native integration. But what I'm seeing, not a tidal wave of, it's almost like a little trickle, is a lot of people with Home Assistant doing a bit of DIY automation, and that crowd is growing, and they are helping to simplify it for people who aren't as technical as well. So although my heat pump natively, it won't take advantage of any of these cheap time of use tariffs, there are people out there who have made a little, bus controller and a little module, and then all of a sudden it speaks to the Octopus API. Now my heat pump knows when the cheap times of day are automatically, and every day it could be doing a hot water cycle at varying times of the night, and it could just pick which is the cheapest. I think that has got to be the future, just making it effortless for the customers. The end user experience. At the moment, it's kind of the domain of the ultra tech geeks and nerds who love it and they embrace it, but it's a lot of work and a lot of effort to kind of manage it. And I think we're going to see a lot more in the kind of automation phase in the next few years, as we're already starting to see. I think we're just on the cusp of delving into that really on a more widespread scale.
Yeah, completely agree. And yeah, you're quite right. I think that's where we want things to go, but we see the indications that is where they're going, and also completely agree. It's got to be easy. It's not for everybody sort of agonizing over the settings and integrations and all the associated steps that are necessary. It's got to be super simple. It's got to be productized. It's got to be a push button or a subscription or something that gives you reassurance that you're being looked after in the background. Something is acting in your best interest to achieve best outcome. So yeah, completely agree. Got two more questions. First one, and I think you've already again covered some of this, but sort of final advice that you'd give to people who are considering solar. I think you'd said something earlier about go for it, max it out, get stuff on your roof. We've mentioned obviously there are significant costs attached to it, so it's not always as simple as saying, oh, let's do it. But is there anything over and above that you'd add to your advice?
Yeah, just reiterate, go for it. I think it's important for people to recognize that the quicker you get solar panels on the roof, the quicker you're going to get your return on investment, the quicker they're going to start earning their keep for you. And if are any fears or concerns, then do your research. Along with Gary Does Solar that I've mentioned, there's the Solar UK Facebook group. I think there's something like 80,000 people in that group now. Any questions or concerns, pop them in there. And there's incredibly technical people, but incredibly kind people who will sacrifice their time to offer you some free advice and reassurance. And I guess it's that thing about just getting the confidence and just going for it. And I've met lots of people who have made decisions in life and regretted those decisions. I haven't yet met anyone who's put solar panels on the roof and regrets doing that. So maybe that tells us something.
Okay, that's a great way of finishing up. So the last thing I was going to ask you is basically how can people stay updated with your content and keep learning about everything to do with smart home tech and solar?
Yeah, go onto YouTube, type in Upside Down Fork, no spaces, no letters, no capital letters, any of that stuff, no numbers, sorry. As well as solar and other home technologies, I cover heat pumps, electric vehicles, and more of my sometimes crazy shenanigans on there.
Okay, amazing. Thank you very much for your time, Richard. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Simon.